Hello and welcome to today's video. Now, before we focused on the successes that the League of Nations had in the 1920s, and I think sometimes the League of Nations can just, in the 1920s, everyone just assumes that it was successful, but there were major things that happened in the 1920s also that led to a lot of failures to do with the League of Nations. And if anything, like I mentioned in the last video, there was a lot of successes in the early years of the 1920s, but also there was a lot of failures as well in the early years of the 1920s. Now, the best way to remember the failures of the League of Nations in the 1920s is this word here in the top right called VIMCO, which I'm circling in blue. So the best way, like I try and remember it, is VIMTO, but it's kind of terrible younger brother that quite didn't make it, called VIMCO. So VIMCO, what does it stand for? Well, there's lots of different events that it stands for, and we'll start over here. And as you can see, the first one, the V, stands for Vilna. And Vilna was, at the time, the capital of Lithuania. And there was a lot of instability after World War One, boundaries of countries, who had what, who should be where, which countries' boundaries lay in which specific place. And in 1920, the Poles captured the capital of Lithuania. Now, the League actually ordered Poland to leave, told them to get out, they had no right to be there. And this is a recurring thing now that happens. Poland, instead of listening and maybe just leaving, like we've seen in other cases with the successes with Greece and Bulgaria, Poland just refused. And that's a key thing I'm going to circle in red. They refused to leave Vilna. And there was a bit of a shock. And in the end, some people say, well, did the League not push it because they weren't really that bothered about Poland taking Vilna? It was an part of Russia, which was now turned into communist country, and France and Britain were wary of communism, and Poland was an ally of France and Britain. So there's a bit of a debate whether, in the 1920s in particular, did France and Britain kind of dictate policy and were not that bothered about Poland taking Vilna. The next one was the invasion of the Ruhr, and this is a big one that happens in 1923. So the I in VIMCO stands for invasion of the Ruhr, and that happened in 1923. And what happened is that France invaded the Ruhr, which is a part between France and Germany. And it happened when Germany fell behind on its reparations payments. So Germany fell behind on its payments, and what France did is they went and invaded the Ruhr, because the Ruhr was a huge industrialised area of Germany, and France believed, right, we'll go and take the Ruhr and we'll just take the materials for ourselves, basically cut out the middleman of Germany paying reparations, and we'll go and force the German workers to produce more in this industrialised area, and then we can sell it and get the profits, and that's our reparation payments. But the point is here that France, as a part of the council, remember, one of the key players in the League of Nations, did not even consult the League. So France, who was part of the Big Four, didn't even consult the League before they did it. And remember, one of the key aims of the League of Nations is to keep world peace, encourage cooperation, everyone working together. And in this sense, invading the Ruhr was kind of contradictory to those aims, I feel, because France just decided to go and invade the Ruhr, and in a way could have caused a lot of violence, and they did cause a lot of aggravation and violence and resentment in Germany. There was a few people were killed because of the invasion of the Ruhr, German demonstrators and protesters in particular. And I know one of the aims was to help hold the peace treaty of Versailles, so that is, make sure Germany pay its reparations, but it's the way that France went about it and just decided to invade the Ruhr without even consulting the League of Nations. Is, in my eyes, a huge failure of the League. Next one is M, which is Memel in 1923, which is Lithuania now seized Memel, which was a German port under the League's control. So they seized Memel, and the League just once again told Lithuania to leave, like they did with Poland, ordering them to leave. And once again, I'm going to circle in red, Lithuania refused. And they just left it. And Lithuania had Memel. Now, another massive one that happens in 1923, as you can see already, 1923, not exactly the most stable year for the League of Nations. We've got invasion of the Ruhr, we've got seizure of Memel, and now that third one to do in 1923 is Corfu, which is a massive one, which in last year's exam came up, 2015 exam, a cartoon to do with Corfu, and this happened in 1923. Now, the main thing to remember with Corfu is that an Italian general was murdered in Greece, and in reaction to this, Mussolini, leader of Italy, went and occupied Corfu. So he went and occupied Corfu. And Greece went to the League of Nations, asked for help. So they asked for help, and the League said, right, Mussolini, you have to leave. And remember, once again, Italy was part of the Council. Like France had been part of the Big Four in the League of Nations, so were Italy. And the League had to order Mussolini to leave. And what did Mussolini do? Just like Lithuania, just like Poland, and to an extent France, because they didn't even consult the League of Nations, Mussolini refused to leave Corfu, demanding some kind of retribution for the murder of the Italian general. And in the end, it was Greece who were forced to pay compensation to Italy. So, even though the League of Nations said, look, you're wrong, you can't be invading Corfu, you need to leave straight away, in the end, Greece had to accept responsibility for this, even though there was flimsy evidence that it was Greece that was involved in murdering the Italian general in the first place, and they had to leave. They had to pay compensation to Italy. And only then did Mussolini leave Corfu. So in a sense, Mussolini, who remember, once again, like I've said, was part of the League of Nations Council, which I'm going to write here, like France was, part of the Council, he was blackmailing, in a sense, the League of Nations. And this is demonstrated in a cartoon up here. And as you can see in this cartoon, you've got Mussolini, which I'm going to circle in red, looking a bit smug, hand on his head, on the elbows on the table in the League of Nations main offices in Geneva. And in a way, he's blackmailing the League because he's brought war, which is demonstrated by the god of war here. It's always the god of Mars, the god of war. He's brought war to the table of the League of Nations, and he's blackmailing them with this huge sword that he's putting on the table. And peace plans, which is not 100% clear here, are falling off. There's no sign of peace at the moment. And the rest of the League are cowering down the bottom here, really not knowing how to react. So I'll just delete some of these so it's a bit clearer. So I'll put in blue, we've got the League of Nations, other members of the League of Nations, not really knowing what to do, scared by Mussolini, who's looking cocky and looking confident about forcing and threatening war with the League of Nations. He's saying, if you don't pay or get Greece to pay, therefore I'm going to threaten war, and war will happen in Corfu. Now, a key interesting thing to remember about this cartoon as well here is you've got the French prime leader over here, Poincaré, forgive my French, and he's not really interested. He's looking at papers, he's looking away. And we need to be thinking, well, why is the cartoonist drawn France, the leader of France, who's also supposed to be representing the League of Nations? Why is it that he's not really getting involved in this event? Why is he not trying to sort out and perhaps assist in stopping Mussolini like the rest of the League of Nations, even though at the moment the cartoonist is portraying him as weak and ineffective? Well, the main thing is because in the same year, in 1923, France were obviously invading the Ruhr. So in this cartoon, we've got Poincaré and we've got Mussolini back to back. And the title of the cartoon is The Occupationists. And Poincaré turns to Mussolini, and I know it's not 100% clear in the picture, but he's saying, so are you not evacuating Corfu? He asks Mussolini, and Mussolini just replies no. And says a French saying which is "Je suis, je reste," which means "here I am, here I remain. And Poincaré, who's French leader, like I've said, turns around to Mussolini and says, oh, you seem to have the French idiom, so like the French attitude, where have you got this from? Because Mussolini's quoting to Poincaré in French. And Mussolini turns round and just says to Poincaré, well, guess, where do you think I've got this attitude from? So this cartoonist has been really critical of two of the Council of the League of Nations. And a thing I didn't mention as well is they're both reading newspapers. So Poincaré here, in circle in blue, is reading about Corfu, and the one on the floor here was Mussolini reading about the Ruhr. So the attitude by the cartoonist is like, well, it's not surprising that Mussolini has invaded Corfu, because France have just gone and invaded the Ruhr for their own personal agenda as well. So when people are being critical of Italy, particularly France, how can they be critical? They're being contradictory, hypocrites, because at the same time they're invading the Ruhr and facing their own agenda. So these two major things happen in 1923. We've got invasion of the Ruhr and Corfu, and they're the two biggest failures in the early 20s of the League of Nations. And in the end, by 1924, the only way to sort out, for example, the invasion of the Ruhr is not through the work of the League of Nations, because Germany really struggles after the invasion of the Ruhr. Its economy goes to hell. There was huge economic problems in Germany where hyperinflation kicks in. And you'd think, well, the League of Nations might try and do something about that. Well, obviously, one of their founding members isn't exactly doing anything to stop hyperinflation as they have invaded the Ruhr. And also, Italy seemed preoccupied with blackmailing the League of Nations as well. In the end, the Dawes Plan, which is what O stands for in VIMCO, is put into place. And the Dawes Plan was a set of loan payments that America, who have to remember was not part of the League, so I put here not part of League of Nations, and USA basically say to Germany, right, we'll put this thing together called the Dawes Plan, we'll loan you money, Germany. Germany can then pay off its reparation payments to France and Britain, and then France and Britain can pay off its war loans to America. So a big circle of money going round and round. So money going round and round and round. America to Germany, Germany to France and Britain back to America. And in the end, the reason that's part of a failure of the League of Nations is because there was huge problems with reparation payments, which Germany couldn't deal with, which led to the invasion of the Ruhr, and it wasn't the League of Nations that sorted it out, it was America, and that was because of America, and because of America, once again, stability was brought to Europe, particularly in Germany. So, there we go, we've got VIMCO, Vilna, invasion of the Ruhr, Memel, Corfu, and other treaties, in particular the Dawes Plan of 1924.